What is up, DTube Steam blockchain? So today I want to talk about the topic that I want to call markets are fascinating. So the last 2 years I've mainly been focusing on sort of considering different markets and how they sort of work. For example, on the internet, how so moving into sort of this like when sort of everyone is using the internet and everyone is sharing data right now. People sharing data, people sharing information with each other, and you have this more global kind of data sharing. It's very interesting because then you really start to consider more markets and sort of how they're tied together. So the last 2 years, especially with Steam blockchain, I've mainly been focusing on, let's call it, research and development. So I got a little bit tired of just so when you're making something, for example, I do also smartphone kind of reviews. Been doing that since 2012, or actually 2011. And when you do that for many years, eventually you sort of start to understand it, the concept. Okay, you buy new phones and then you review them, but eventually you sort of want to get deeper into how markets actually works and how everything's sort of tied together. So research and development is something that sort of is fascinating. It's something that you sometimes have to go a little bit deeper into to develop a better product or to develop your own better understanding of sort of how the world works. And when I realized that this decentralized technology was the latest thing that sort of would move me forward, because you sort of come into, let's say, a wall where you realize in the old paradigm that, well, you can't really grow, or you can grow, but you can grow only up to a certain point, and then you hit a wall in sort of the old paradigm, and then you sort of dive deeper into, okay, what's the new paradigm? Okay, it's kind of this decentralized movement. It's kind of going, trying to find new markets, kind of trying to more look at it from the human side, see what other humans need, see what other humans are doing, and sort of spend more time taking in data from a proof of brain perspective. So, for example, one thing that I realized the last 2 years is you realize how you actually are expanding your borders of ignorance all the time, and you realize that, well, humans are not even aware of how high level of ignorance they have. They're not even aware of all this new technology. So when you spend a lot of time in research and development and spend a lot of time taking in a lot of new complex ideas and systems intelligence, and when you test a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff fail and some stuff succeed, especially when you're testing a lot of new things, and when a lot of stuff fail, that takes a lot of time and effort, and time, energy, effort, and it's a lot of trial and error, which makes it so it's not really a clear path. And that brings me a little bit into why market sort of is fascinating. So, for example, one thing that I sort of see with these old sort of platforms, or these social media platforms are still sort of growing, you sort of start to, for example, in a market side perspective, you sort of start to see how it's excluding so many people. So a lot of people sort of starting to realize when they're talking, or when they're writing a post, when they're doing a video, when they're doing a tweet, maybe they're not even getting that much reach, and they sort of starting to realize that, oh wait, it's like these platforms are sort of now moving away from what I have worked on. Like maybe they have built up their followers, maybe they built up their likes, maybe they have built up their shares or something, and then they realize that, oh wait, it's like the private company is actually working against me. And that makes you really want to dive deeper into intelligence, and really understand more how the world works in deeper ways, because you realize, oh, wait a sec, now my sort of work that I did for many years is starting to get undermined. So you sort of have to dive deeper into research and development, and a big aspect then is looking at everything from how different markets works and how people need to be connected more together, because you have this like global ecosystem that needs to be combined with better and newer technology. And it's kind of fun to see, from a market side perspective, you sort of see these horrible ads, for example, that you can see on YouTube or on Instagram or maybe sometimes on Twitter. You can see how they are trying to market like different products, and you can see how some products have super low integrity. You can sort of feel a lot with the internet that a lot of stuff just wants to it doesn't want to give you a good deal. It just wants to try to sort of scam you in a certain way. And it's interesting because I sort of look at this. I enjoy the challenge of eventually have like a perfect internet with a perfect experience that's like transparent and doesn't feel scammy, and that people still can sort of make value. So we're sort of seeing that with Avalon blockchain, that you can sort of have a token abundance system. So if more people get onboarded eventually when mainnet launches, and so now it's just a testnet, but the core idea of the Avalon blockchain is the more that's using and the more people that are staking and the more people that are daily using the platform, the more incentive it comes because it creates more tokens. So that's like the opposite of some other systems that are looking at it more from trying to create more scarcity. That's two different ways of sort of looking at it, and it's not any right or wrong, but it's kind of interesting to see. So you have all these like different sides. You have the advertisers, you have the content creators, and you have the consumers, and these all need to eventually play on the same sort of network. And it's fascinating to see how it gets connected with currency as well. And it's kind of fun when you sort of start to see the limitations of a lot of currencies that way. It's like you sort of see, oh, these people in this country, they can only communicate with this currency with another 10 million people or maybe 5 million people, but then they can't like reach people in a global way because they don't have modern technology for that. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So you start to see in terms of markets how stuff can be better, but you also see that the allocation of resources eventually needs to move into new markets. And if this, and you see like if this allocation of resources, if it goes slow, then these old sort of, or a lot of old systems, a lot of old paradigms, they can go on for such a long time, right? But when stuff really gets moving, maybe the media is promoting something or whatever, but when stuff is really starting to move, it can go pretty quick, because people, I think in many ways, they sort of mentally have prepared for many years for something new. So let's say people probably, or they do sort of take in stuff during a long period of time, and then eventually one day maybe people do some flippening, maybe there is some event that happens, and just because people are sort of mentally prepared in their head already, they sort of know where to be or know what new sort of technology to adopt, and this is kind of fun. So this is kind of same as how advertising works in many ways, that people see something a lot, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna do something instantly, but maybe they see it 100 times and then eventually they sort of get a little bit more interested in something. So it's interesting how marketing is playing into all of this, and how marketing is something that really is in all sort of industries, and how it ties everything sort of together. And that only the big changes happens when marketing and when a marketing machine really gets going. I think I talked a little bit about that in the past, like the power of marketing. And it's very interesting how people can do their own sort of marketing, probably now the best way with sort of video, because video is very visual, it's high definition, it's the best medium to sort of share something out there to a lot of people, and there is a higher chance that more people are going to tune into something, because there is a demand, like there is a large market of people that are interested in different subjects, and you can sort of find those people now easier with these new technologies that's going to roll out the next couple of years. And we already see a lot of people starting to adopt it more and more. For example, on the Steam blockchain, it's starting to happen a little bit more and more, but it takes a lot of time. But then again, we should look at it from, in many ways, also a longer sort of time perspective. Because if you look at it from the longer time perspective, you can see that people kind of do change rather fast in some ways, and that's kind of cool to see. So yeah, markets, for me, to summarize, it's just fascinating for me, and I can talk about it forever. Like when you like see all these markets growing, and then eventually see people gonna adopt better systems that it's gonna be better for them, it's kind of cool and fascinating to sort of track it. So yeah, markets are just fascinating. So that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. Have a great day, DTube and Steam blockchain.